Well, look, I mean, obviously a lot depends on the security situation in the east of the country. Assuming no deterioration in that, assuming Russia stays on the sidelines, the positive looking from 2013 to 2015 is that the base is very, very low. I mean, imagine real GDP dropped by about 20%. In dollar terms, the Ukrainian economy halved. Wages are very low. The currency is very cheap. So I think there's certainly a bounce, and I think we could be surprised on the upside. So the government and the IMF are suggesting 2% real GDP growth. I wouldn't be surprised to see something more than that, in the short term. I think the challenge for Ukraine over the medium and longer term is to sustain growth at that relatively high level, and that's dependent on structural reforms, difficult kind of things. What I've learned from this particular conference today is, rule of law is absolutely central to everything. And then I think there needs to be much more progress on that. Obviously, the US ambassador has been very vocal. I think international business would certainly support that view.
And speaking about security issue, in this context, does frozen conflict is better than the hot war?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we would all agree that anything that ensures the loss of lives is what we all want. I think at the moment, the level of, the amount of territory that is in rebel-held hands, and including the Crimea as well. I think the rest of the Ukrainian economy can still get by without that. I don't think that is an anchor or a dead weight necessarily around the neck of the rest of the economy. I think it can rebound. I don't think a critical mass of territory and industrial assets have been taken sufficient that it really will stall recovery and growth. I think the rest of Ukraine can get on and rebound, but the longer term, higher growth plane is obviously dependent on structural reforms.
You mentioned territory. There are a lot of experts who said that the size of Ukraine actually it's a problem to reform it quickly. Do you agree with that?
Well, lots of people have used other examples of countries like Georgia, the Baltic states, Israel maybe, that have particular models of development. Sure, it's very difficult, no doubt about it. It's not necessarily transferable. What works in a very small country may not work in a very big country like Ukraine. But, the positive is there is only one way forward. This crisis internationally, many countries typically policymakers and politicians don't do difficult reforms unless they're pushed. Crises in other countries, I can think of Turkey in 2000, 2001, Hungary in 95, 96, Bulgaria in 96, 97, and then Baltic States, Romania after 2008. Crisis really formed radical reform and radical change, and I think Ukraine has that opportunity. The time for change is now. The longer you leave it, the less likely there is going to be a reform. And what's absolutely clear, what was clear in 2013 was the economy was not working. The reality is, I always use the example of, per capita GDP in 1991 of Poland, Russia and Ukraine was about the same, $3,000 to $4,000 per capita. In 2013, before Maidan, Ukraine was $3,000 to $4,000, Russia and Poland were $14,000. So the existing model just was not working. I think policymakers here need to take a total rethink of the model of development. Now, it might be east or it might be west, but you need to make a choice.
And the topic of today's conference is a new social contract. As you spoke about oligarchs, how do you see the place of oligarchs in this new social contract system? Well,
big business, can have very positive and constructive roles in any society. In the UK, in the US, they can be drivers for growth. They can force also difficult policy reform and change. I think the distinction and the difference in Ukraine is the dominance of big business and oligarchs in politics. It's very unusual, and I don't think it's healthy. And I think one of the big reforms that should have happened after Maidan was a separation of big business from direct political control. In many other countries, I think it's rare to find, I can't think of an example where big business has such a direct influence on politics in the country, and that's not healthy.